So, good afternoon, everyone. So, let's slowly start. And so, my name is Leandro Parente. Uh, I'm a researcher at OpenGeoHub. And basically, I'm here today to present this kind of hands-on tutorial about uh, automating machine learning applied to area regression modeling. So when I was kind of preparing the materials, I realized that maybe considering the time I was a bit ambitious because basically these are basically two big topics. One is really area regression and how we can run models, for example, at polygon level and apply them in a gridded data, raster data. And the other is really the kind of auto ML, so how you can, with the very little number of code, assess some initial results for machine learning. So I prepared a kind of extensive tutorial. Let's see how far we can go. And yeah, but the material is there, and I'm open also to keep the discussion further. Basically, the work that I'm presenting here, it's supported by two projects that are running at OpenGeoHub, the Open Earth Monitor and the Global Pasture Watch. I will have a few slides about that just to give context. And also the tutorial that I will show, it's actually like a real data set and a real application. So I kind of struggled also a bit to extract what would be the parts that would be very helpful for this tutorial, because I will show the pipeline, but it's quite extensive. So, but yeah, I would like to emphasize that that's a kind of a real application with real data. So it gives us like more opportunity to apply some techniques. So basically, I will talk about how we are doing the global distribution of livestock animals using machine learning. So the modeling pipeline, and I will focus specifically in the spatial zonal statistics. And I have also like a few slides about AutoML, what is the main concept, and we can go for the hands-on part. Yeah, and I will finish with some key takeaways. So I shared the slides in the Mattermost, and you can also access them through this QR code or the short URL. And so basically, as I said, this work is part of the Open Earth Monitor cyber infrastructure. It's a project that OpenGeoHub is leading. It's funded by the European Commission, and basically we are putting together software. Mostly of the software is open source, Earth observation data, and some user communities to address different use cases, so at global and European scale. So the project is kind of in the last year now, so you can find more information in the Earth Monitor. I bet that you'll already checked some of the results in the summer school, but we are constantly showing the use case and the data that we are producing in the context of this project. So basically, there are several use cases, and what we did here is the Global Pasture Watch, that it's also kind of a big consortium and another project that we are part. We managed to actually make the two projects work together. So what we are doing here for the livestock, it's also a use case that we can leverage in the OMC and also interact with different partners. And specifically about the Global Pasture Watch, it's a consortium of research partners developing global grassland and livestock monitoring data. So we have different organizations, and it's funded by the World Resources Institute, the Land and Carbon Lab, and the source of the funding is the Bezos Earth Fund. And in this project, basically, we are developing 4 global data sets, global grassland map with 2 classes and showing and the extent of the grassland areas in the planet, and the gross primary productivity, short vegetation height, basically median height for different vegetation types, including also like open landscapes, savanna, and different types of grasslands, and basically the livestock density. So except from the livestock density, all the three products are relying on the Landsat data, 30 meter, and the livestock density we are modeling at 1 kilometer. So this tutorial will basically focus in the approach that we implemented to map the world using basically machine learning. There's a kind of extensive benchmark that we did in the manuscript. It's still under review. And in this work, we mapped the distribution of cattle, goat, sheep, and horse at 1 kilometer, but on an annual base. So it's actually a time series from 2000 to 2022. So, and we are currently also updating for 2023 and 2024. So here's an example of the data set. So, and this is it was more than 1 year, 1.5 years of work, basically using livestock census data. We will put the hands in this data, so we'll have a good feeling of how it looks like. Different Earth observation data sets and machine learning model. And the last step, it's the adjustment of the head count, the number of heads by the FAUSTAT. That it's basically a national, like a global database, but with the national number of animals for every country. So we also, so one thing that it's kind of key in this modeling is, so the census data basically gives us the number of animals, but we don't model directly the number of animals. We model the density. And to model the density, we need to have the area of grassland. And so we basically created this layer, call it potential land for livestock production, because also combines some areas of agriculture. So in this case, when you combine that, because some municipalities, they don't have any grassland mapped, but they have a lot of livestock because some animals are in-house, or some animals are basically, most of the animals are relying on some external source of food or in croplands coming to the municipality or from different place. So it's quite tricky define that, but we made some kind of design decisions. We produced this potential land for livestock production, but the main point here is we have two data sets that are very different in source and also like in structure. And when we combine them, there are some challenges that we need to treat. So I will basically show this better in the hands-on part. So here's the general pipeline. Of course, I will not go through all these steps. The idea here is not really kind of discuss or analyze the maps that we produced, but it's more like explaining the key parts and aspects that I think might be useful for other applications. If you really want to understand kind of all the details about the methodology, I suggest you to check this webinar. We gave this webinar, I think, 3-4 months ago, and it's online. And also, in this webinar, Daniele Dare presented about the gridded livestock of the world and some of the kind of like old-fashioned methods to do this approach without, for example, machine learning, but also some kind of evolution of downscaling census data methodologies. And here I explain several of the aspects also of the mapping that we produced, and I discuss a bit the results. So, but for me, from everything that we did in this work, I think that's actually the most important part And I think that's actually something that can really help different applications. It's not about only the livestock, but it's more like about the methodology. So, and we will do it in practice, but the concept here is basically what we are calling the spatial temporal zonal statistics. And we might have also some confusion with the terminology. We received, for example, the reviews from the manuscript, and one of the comments were really like to kind of review the terminology, because we use, for example, pixels, gridded data, raster data. So there are different communities, and this work, it's actually floating between different academic communities, and so what I'm calling here like spatial temporal zonal statistics is basically this concept. The data structure that we have for the census data, it's basically a polygon. So we have, for example, cattle, head count, and this is a municipality in Brazil, in the Amazon region. And for this municipality, we know the number of cattle that we have in the entire municipality, but we don't know exactly where the cattle is distributed inside of the municipality. And because of that, that's actually the goal. We want to distribute the number of animals across the areas where we can potentially have livestock. So that's the role of the potential land for livestock layer that I'm showing here. And this is basically a fraction of land. This data set was derived from 30 meter. It means that the pixels that are white, they actually have a fraction of land that it's not entirely grassland or cropland or can be used for livestock. And you can actually see this here. So in this region, some pixels are mixed because we are talking about 1 kilometer. So maybe a pixel would be like, I don't know, 30% fraction of land. It means that inside of that pixel, 30% could be used to livestock production. And the rest cannot be used, for example, can be forest, urban area. So that's the advantage to use some high resolution data at 30 meter and go to the upscaling part. So two data sets, very different in nature, but basically what we are doing here, we use the potential land for livestock to estimate the fraction of area that we have from livestock inside of this municipality. And with that, now I have the number of heads, I have the livestock area, and I can derive the livestock density. How many heads we have inside of the municipality, considering the an area, a square kilometer. Here it starts like really one of the first problems, because these data, they might not be compatible at all. You might have like some mismatch between what the land that we are saying that can have livestock in the census data. You might have like some problems also. So, but yeah, combining them, it will create issues, but that's the way that we can actually work. And a second step is, now that we know the densities, we want to use other raster data, gridded data, to run the modeling. So, but we don't know exactly, for each pixel, we don't know what is the livestock density. So what we do, we basically take this area, potential land for livestock, we mask all the pixels that are outside of this area, and we compute the spatial average only with the raster data, only with the gridded data that it's inside of the potential land for livestock. For example, if I would take the average without masking, I would include a lot of forest here. And this would basically damage the modeling, because I probably will not find, I could find, but it's not expected to have like, for example, like forest correlating with the livestock, at least not, maybe would correlate inversely, but this relation would also be in the masked data. So, and once I do that, I compute a spatial average, basically a spatial mean. And here I have the mean value of the INIR band on May 2020 for this polygon. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm bringing the raster data to the same scale of the polygon data. And in this case, of course, there is some smoothing effect here. Instead, to have all these pixels, I only have now one number to represent this variable in this municipality. But I can also do it on time. So what happened is, because most of this data that I'm showing here, we have them for multiple years. And we also have a number of animals for multiple years. And also, we have the potential land for livestock for multiple years. So for the same municipality, I can do the same process. So basically a spatial temporal mean, and the temporal now we understand the concept. It's basically because now I'm taking the average, not from 2020, but for 2000. And I have also, I also have like the densities for 2000. So with that, I can organize a data set in a way that I can train like a model to predict all the years, and still at polygon level, right? So that's exactly what we will do in the hands-on part. In the end, we basically finish with several entries, and in the paper, in the manuscript, we basically used more than 300 layers. In the demonstration, I will show just a few of them, I think 47. And of course, we will work with a small area. And basically, yeah, for me, that's the key concept that I would like to illustrate here. So, and basically, in the hands-on part, we will show the parts that are in red. So basically, how to extract the data, calculate the livestock density, and also run the AutoML part. Okay, so as I said, the AutoML part, it's something that I decided to connect here, and I hope I managed to also run that by the end of the session. But the principal concept about that is really like when you use some framework, like AutoML, what is it? It's basically when you run some framework to build in a very automated way, like a model to classify and to run, for example, classification or regression, but in a data set, so with some predefined pipelines. So, and there are several ways to do that, but in essence, you need to have training data, a way to assess the algorithms, a set of hyperparameter set of models, like it's kind of a menu of models that you can run, and several frameworks already have this in place. So when with a few lines of code, you can basically run and have like a feeling of which data set would be, which model would be better for a specific application. So about that, we have two computational notebooks here that I will not cover in this tutorial, but if you enter, you can basically see these frameworks in action. And this is not in the context of the area regression, but it's good to give some idea of how apply this in practice. So in these tutorials, basically 3 frameworks are covered: the PyCaret, FlayML, and basically I will show here the EvolML, so how it works in practice. So here you can also check like a tutorial that I did in the Open Earth Monitor global workshop in explaining how to use this to map, for example, FAPAR using MODIS data. So basically per pixel classification. Okay, so now it's time to go to the hands-on part. So here in the presentation, there are 2 links. So the first one, the second one is basically to the GitHub. And here, that's the code that we will execute. And there are several sections here. I'm just open to explain where the link it is. But if you want to run this by yourself outside of your environment, you can open this link in the Colab. So the Colab, it's kind of working fine. I tested. The only issue is when you need to install all these libraries, it might take a while. So if you really want to execute things during the session in the Colab, I suggest you to just starting installing the libraries now. It might take 5-10 minutes. And this is like a shared notebook. So you need to be able to change and have this on your side. You need to save a copy of that on your drive, and basically Colab will give you some resource to run the experiment. I will basically use my own environment, and in both, basically the notebook is basically the same. So first we install the libraries, and this is a kind of another approach that takes some time, because here is basically to download all the data. So it's about 5 gigs. So it might take a few minutes, depending on the connection. But if it's in Colab, it will download to the Colab environment. So if you want to run things in Docker, it's also possible. So if you don't have your own environment set up now, you can basically get this command here and put in your, I will put first in a text editor. And there are 2 placeholders that are very important. The first one is this local user. So my local user is Leandro. Okay, and let me see if you can, yeah. Leandro, and the external port. So because maybe you have another container running in this port, I suggest you put some port that you are not using. So for example, something like this. And yeah, you need to be root. And yeah, I need to change the name also, because I have one container with that. That will not be a problem for you. Yeah, and now you have the Docker running in the specific port. So here you still need to install some libraries. I will not go through that because I already have the environment with the libraries. But now you can basically access in the specific port where you open it, where you set up, and you put the password. The password is also here in the like here in the OpenGeoHub, in the Docker. And yeah, that's actually the environment that we use internally. And there are several libraries already ready to use here, GDAL version 3.10. So yeah, I will basically run the tutorial in this environment, but you can set up it by yourself if you want, right? Or use the Colab. So in this, inside of the container, you need to have access to the notebook. So basically, you can enter in the folder and that you created with the user, your user inside of the Docker, and just do a git clone to get all the repository to the container. So I can show how to do that. Let me get there. So you go here and you click in terminal. Okay, yeah, the repository already exists. And now you will have access to all the code that we developed in the global pasture watch. And if you follow the URL in the slides, you end up here, basically. So in this way, you can run things from your side. And in the Colab, it will take some time to set up the libraries, but you don't need to set up the environment as I did, of course. So let's start. So the idea now is I will go through the tutorial and explain the main steps that I described in the slide. And I will basically, I already have the libraries installed in my environment, so we don't need to wait for that. It's here. And yeah, basically, I will clean the cells. And I will basically do this. So I put some information here to describe what we are doing. So we have a bit more than 1 hour. So I think we will be able to cover all the steps. So what we are doing here is basically, I prepared a subset of the census data, specifically for a state in Brazil called Goiás. And by the way, that's actually the state where I'm from. So it was not by coincidence, because I also checked the data to make sure that we had a kind of a ready-to-use data set. And in this state, we will have head count estimates for 4 animals: cattle, goat, sheep, horse, actually 5, and buffalo. And the state has 247 polygons. So for each polygon, for several years, from 2000 to 2022, the head counts are basically there. So this is a census data, right? They have some methodology to check with the farmers and apply questionnaire. It's not inventory data. They don't go and count all the cows every year. Otherwise, that would be very costly. And some municipalities, they have really like 100,000 of animals. So that's the basic census data that we are, base input for the census data. When you download the data set, there's also like several raster layers. And these raster layers, they have different spatial and temporal resolutions. And I will show how to harmonize that and produce a consistent kind of data cube with exactly the same spatial and temporal resolution for several, for the whole period. Also, inside of the raster layers, there's also the potential land for livestock production. That's basically the area where the livestock is occurring. And basically here's about like the data set, right? So we will execute the steps and explore a bit the data set. So what we want to do is we want to compute spatial mean for all the raster layers, so vegetation index, GDP, human development index. We will explore what the data there, but it's basically we need to have, like as I show in the slides, a spatial mean inside of the polygon to aggregate all the pixels. And for the land, we will basically sum up all the values. So we will end up with the same value that I show in the slide. So what is the area of livestock inside of each municipality? And this will run on an annual basis, right? With this information, this will basically be, we can treat this as a kind of a benchmark data set. Now we have the densities, we will have all the mean values for the polygons, and now it's just a matter, it's a table. So we can just use any machine learning model not any, right? We can use some deep learning model, but if a convolutional neural network wouldn't work, because now we have only a single value for that municipality. But in this case, if you use any kind of random forest, support vector machine, linear regression, any model would work, because it's basically a table with features, covariates, and you want to do the target variable. In this case, it's the livestock density. So We will train a model on the polygon level, and we will assess the accuracy. We will show some spatial cross-validation. We will have some tests set to see how the model is performing. And we also use this AutoML inside of in the same data set, and we will compare random forest with a method that AutoML basically shows that it's the best. And the last part, the last step, with the model that we trained on the polygon level, we will predict the pixel level. And once we do that, we basically go now for all the pixels covering the area, and we run the prediction. And in this case, you think, okay, the model was trained in the scale of the polygon, and you apply on the pixel. So there is a mismatch between this data set. But yeah, we will see what is the output, right? So yeah, before jump to the code, if you have anyone with a question, or if you have any question at any moment, just put your hand up, and yeah, we can discuss. So okay, I will move forward. So here's basically all the libraries that we need to install. So this specific library, the scikit map, it's basically the main library that we use at OpenGeoHub. So it's maintained by our several projects, and we basically use this library to do most of our data products. You might think that it's not, it's kind of outdated, but we have several branches here that we are basically working, and the code we are still putting together several of the developments that we are doing. So I will basically use this library to speed up the reading of the data. And of course, you also need to have GDAL. Here there are some instructions of how to install GDAL, and also the how to install like the eval-ml. So this is, it will bring a lot of libraries. So that's why it takes so much time in the Google Colab. And this library wget, it's only to download all the data and have this in on your site. So basically, we can start. I will basically run this cell with all the libraries that we will use, and I also prepared a set of functions that it's here. So most of we will use all the functions that are here, and unfortunately I don't have like time to go in detail for all the functions here, but I will try to explain in general what it's happening, and you can check the code and contact one of the OpenGeoHub developers to discuss if you have any questions later. Okay, so now we import the basically this MISC. It's basically all the functions here. So if you are executing this for the first time, you need to have access to the data, and I will prepare a Zenodo with this data set and update the tutorial. But because I will still like organizing the data set, we are still reading directly from a URL, but it's good to have this on the Zenodo also with the source code together, right? And basically here you extract that, and this will give all the data that you need. So basically the polygon data set, all the raster data, and we can start basically reading the polygon data set. So the polygon data set that you have here, so I'm basically reading this with the GeoPandas, and we have 247 municipalities, and they have like different, so they have the name, and for each animal they have the year and the animal, how many animals you have in that municipality. And you can also plot that, so that's how the data looks like, right? So that's a Brazilian state, and each of this polygon is it's a specific municipality. So what happened is you can basically check the columns to have like a clear picture, but it's basically for every animal, you have the kind of time series with all the data and how many years you have for each livestock animal. So the data is organized like that because the polygon, it's the same. And that's also an issue that it's important to mention. Some municipalities might split and this change the data. So according to across these 20 years, you might have like some municipality that divides and two municipalities now occupy the same area. And in this case, this also changed a bit it will actually change a lot the animals numbers. But unfortunately, most of the countries, they don't track this in a very easy way to merge the data, the geospatial data with the census data. So that's kind of, I would say, the first issue, because the census data is basically a table. And in the project, we did a lot of work to assign a geometry for this table and matching like names and things like that. So in this case, for simplicity, we basically assume that the municipality is constant across the whole period and with this different values of animals. So regarding the raster layers, basically we have here several layers that we prepared, and everything here is really real data, right? So you can, once you have access to it, you can basically enter, and it's basically a TIFF file covering the region, and you can open in the, for example, in the QuantGIS, and this CSV gives us some kind of minimal information. So we know what is the origin of this data. This URL is from OpenGeoHub. If the data is static or temporal, so for example, a static data set, it's a DTM, elevation, that will not change over the time. And for example, a vegetation index from MODIS will change over time. So in this case, we are calling this kind of a temporal data set. It has a different time frame. And basically, we also have some information of the spatial resolution that it's embedded in the file name, but here, like it's organized in a spatial in a column, right? So basically, this is the data that we have. It's 47 layers, but for these temporal layers, we have information for all the years. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to check, as I said, all these data sets, when you just download them, and that's exactly what I did for this tutorial. Some of them we pre-processed, but some I basically downloaded and converted to cloud optimize to cloud optimized GeoTIFF. So they have different resolutions, right? So MODIS is 250 meter, and I think Human Development Index, it's 10 kilometer, and some of them, like DTM, it's 960 meter, and several of them are 1 kilometer. So they have different resolutions, even that they cover the same area that I clipped to perfect match. We need to harmonize and match this resolution. So, and there are several libraries that helps with that, but you need to have a data in a very specific format. And basically, when you do this process, some libraries call this as a kind of a data cube. So now you have perfect align and stacked all the data in a way that you can read, right? So one thing that it's kind of one way to do it, you basically reproject and you save all the data by yourself, and basically instead now to have like these different resolutions, you have all the TIFF files matching with the perfect resolution. The downside of that is you need to duplicate the data, right? You need to now change the pixel size. Imagine, for example, for this 10 kilometer here, now I will create 1 kilometer, and I need to find some approach to downscaling the values. So, and I also need to save the data. So I think about 1 year ago, we started using this approach by basically combining and using like a VRT to basically harmonize all these data sets. So what I will do here is, for every resolution, I will define basically a resampling method. So for example, if it's 10K, we use a cubic spline to avoid the blocking effect and have a more smooth surface. This is the case for the human developed index layer. And if it's modes data, I will actually compute the average. So I will have several pixel values for modes, vegetation index, and I want to aggregate them by 1 kilometer, I will use average. And for the others, I will just keep the value nearest neighborhood, but keeping the grid cell perfect aligned, right? Another thing that it's also important, we want to compute areas. And to do that, we need to use equal area projection system. And basically, we are using this good homolocene projection. It makes the Earth looks like a kind of open orange. And yeah, basically, it will be fundamental to us to use this to compute the areas. So what I will do here is I will extract, now that I defined the resampling method, the pixel size, the projection that I want to use, I will define what will be the extent that I'm interested. In this case, I will extract the extent only from the vector data that I have, right? So, for example, if I do that, that's the extent, and the extent here, it's in the target projection, right? It's not the extent in WGS. That's the extent in WGS. So because I need to reproject to an equal area projection system, I need to reproject the vector data and extract the target extent. And it's basically this weird number here that we cannot easily interpret. So what will happen is now I will basically select a different output folder. But what will happen here is basically this function will read all the files that are here in this raster layer with different resolutions, and it will create a command like that. And if you think about this command, this is basically single command from GDAO where all the parameters that I did set, they are defined. So now I have the target resolution, the input layer. So basically I have the extent, the target projection system, the resampling strategy, the pixel size, and here I have what is the input raster layer, but the output, it's a VRT. And a VRT, it's one of the best functionalities of GDAO. It's a virtual raster. It means that this data now will be resampled, and all the pixels will have the same size, and they will be for the same projection, but I don't need to save the data. When I read the data, when I read the VRT, all the steps that I said, they will run on the fly. So, of course, I need to have this file, and you don't need to run this because when you download the data, it's already possible to see. So, but I can show to you how it looks like. So if you go to the tutorial, what here is in Data Cube, it's basically several VRTs, and I will get, for example, this modes data here. And let me just put here and get a bit more space. So if I do a GDAO info in this VRT, yeah, that's because it's the raster layer. I need to be here. So yeah, so I get this one, that's a TIFF file. So here's the pixel size and the projection system. And if I go to the VRT, let me see how it. So the data is here. And the VRT is basically like you have all the parameters to access the raster layer, and all the parameters that we said it's kind of set here, right? We basically this will, when we read the data, will be perfect aligned. So that's the kind of what the GDAL will implement for us. So now we can. So basically, after that, that's what we do for any kind of spatial prediction. You need to have all the data aligned to be able to match all the pixels, and you can save the data. That's also fine. You could use GDAL warp or GDAL translate to do that. But with the VRT, basically, it's not really necessary. So once you have this in the data cube, as I said, you don't need to run, because when you download, you already have the structure to load. The VRTs are already there. But I think this is like an important step that you might use also for other applications. Okay, so now to run the zonal statistics, we need to read all this data set. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to have like a file path with the temporal covariates and with the static covariates that are basically here. And the static, as I said, it will be the same value across all the years, and the temporal covariates will change from one year to another. So now that we have this, basically I will select one polygon. So here I can see the first polygon. I just took the first one with all the values. Here's the geometry, and I can also look how the polygon looks like. And so this polygon, it has data for different years. So if you use this function, extract years, you can see basically from which years the information is ranging. So from 2000 to 2022, and this consider also different animals. So some, for example, some of the polygons might have information only for 2000 to 2010, for example, for buffalo, but for cattle might have like for the entire period. So here just takes all the years, like considering at least one information for one animal. So what happens here is now we basically, with this information of the years, we need to generate like some information to refer to access the exactly year that we want to read. So, and I'm calling this process as a kind of you basically explode. So a good example is this. If you check this variable, temporal cobs, you see that several, like all the layers with temporal information, you have a placeholder here. This means that if you want to, for the modeling, for the reference data obtained in 2010, you need to read the vegetation index for 2010. We want to find a correlation that it's target and specific in a specific period of time, and here is an annual base, right? So for all the temporal data set, we have kind of this set. And basically this method, it's creating like a list with all the files that you need to read. And it's about 708 files. So they are small files, but yeah, it's a large number, because here, the temporal files, you need to read them 22 times. So because we have information of head count for all the 23 years. And in this case here is basically the like the NDVI for the month for January, and here, because we have 23 years, we need to read 23 times this layer. So, and that's the basically the method that will organize and put this information of the year in the file path. And with that, the last layer here, it's the layer that I show in the slides with the area of the livestock. And it means that this layer will be used to mask out the values and do the spatial mean, the spatial average. So we need to have it in a kind of a separated place. So basically, this code here is just selecting the grassland cropland mask and basically putting it in a separated structure. So here we can clearly see that we need to read 23 times this layer and match with the annual information for all the temporal layers, right? So basically here is, now we have a list with the data that we need to read from the, to mask out the pixels and also to try to correlate with the census data. But one thing that it's important, this polygon that we are basically checking here, this is just a very specific region inside of the state. So I think probably is this one, right? So, but the image, it covers the whole state. So we don't need to read all the image. We only need to read the portion of data that covers the specific polygon that we selected. So, and to address that, we basically use this object from raster.io window. And with that, we have now an address that we want to read for all the images, right? That's why we need to have a data cube. So we need to have a perfect aligned structure where I say, I will skip 397 columns and 481 rows and read 18 by 16 pixels. And doing that, of course, I will also avoid reading all the image. And this exactly process here, it's the one that we use it to process the whole word. So it's quite scalable. Even that you think this is an image that I could fit in memory, when you go for a production level or for application that you want to scale up for large areas, that might not be the case. So of course, if you have like a big polygon, maybe like an entire continent, that might be an issue. But if you work with some polygons, at least at the municipality level, that approach is pretty scalable because you don't need to read all the data, right? So what's happening here is, now that we have a list of files, a window that I want to read, and a list of files it's what it is. It's a list of files, basically data cube and the address, right? So if I do this, I can see that's the VRT that I basically created. And here I have everything. And this function, it's a function that we implemented in the scikit-learn map to read all the layers in parallel. But this function has a kind of a special functionality that we implemented that, and actually my colleague David implemented that on a C++ level. It means that it's reading 685 images. Okay, they are local image, but it's using 8 cores, and it's doing this in parallel, but it's doing it on a C++. So it's doing using kind of multi-threading and bypassing all the issues that you have in creating processing or in parallelize things in Python, right? And it's quite fast. It's 2 seconds. So here I did read all the data that we will use for the modeling, 685 layers. And basically the output here, it's a NumPy array, right? 685 layers. And 288 pixels. That it's basically the multiplication of the wide and the height, right? So it's perfect align. Now I will read the mask, and the mask data is the same, but I have it in a different structure because I need to do the masking. I need to use this in a different way to the approach, right? And if you see, it's basically, this mask, it's basically the proportion of land where the livestock can occur, right? It's a kind of a fraction of land. Okay, so basically here, now that we read this data, the data is in memory. There is another step is when this data basically, it reads whole rectangle area, right? Like it's a perfect, here is actually is not symmetric, but it means that I'm also reading pixels that are outside of the municipality. And I don't want that. I don't want to include, for example, a vegetation index that it's outside of this municipality, my average, because it might be an issue, right? So I also need to have a kind of a rasterized version of this polygon. So the mask that I will use to select the pixels to compute the average will be a combination of the area of the polygon and the area where the livestock can occur. And basically here's the same figure. So I also need to mask out the municipality as I'm doing here. And actually we read when we did read this, you can see is basically it's a rectangle. So it's not filtering anything related to the municipality. And here basically this is a function that uses the polygon, the mask information to get the pixel size and also the projection system. And basically this is like a array representation. It's a raster for that polygon. And if you check that also, it's 288. And now we have the mask data, 288, and the COVS data. Right? And if we do this, yeah. So 685 layers for covariates, 23 mask layers, and that's the mask of the polygon. And basically 3 different structures. And here there's a brief description about what the structure means. And there is a new parameter here that we need to pass, that it's what is the value of the mask that I need to ignore. Because I don't want to include areas where I have no land for livestock. And in this case, the value, it's basically 0. So where it's 0, it means that the fraction of land there is 0. I should not use that to do the spatial average for my covariates. And now basically, when I run that, you can see basically I put this verbose mode. So for every year, it's taking 47 layers, and then applying taking the spatial average and returning this. This is quite fast because I don't need to read the data. The data is already in memory. I only need to filter and compute the spatial statistics, right? So, and if you check that, so for the static variable, look, this is the hill shade in the slope. The value is constant for all the years because this data is static, right? So I don't need to, there's no variation. But I need to have this covariate aligned with the temporal data. That's why here in this case, it's repeated. But if you go to the last covariate, this is night light images. So this data set, it's a kind of a new data set they updated recently. They keep maintaining. So just 2 days ago, I downloaded 2003 and 2020, 2023 and 2024. And here you can see the increase in the night lights, right? So The value here, I think it's the intensity of light. They probably have some scale factor lights in the night, right? This is obtained by the DMSP and the VIIRS, like two different missions where they harmonized the data. But more recently, you can see that you have more night light. It means that the city grow during the across the time. So, and here you have the years. And the last, one of the last values that are added here, it's the sum of the mask. And basically, the sum of the mask, instead taking the average for the fraction of the livestock area, here it's taking the sum. So basically, it's aggregating all the pixels where livestock can occur. And we need to remember that this is a equal area projection. It means that I can rely in the pixel area here, and each pixel it's 1 by 1 kilometer. So basically, I only need to consider that the fraction it's represented between 0 and 100, and if I divided this by 100, I have the area of the livestock, where the livestock area of land where the livestock can occur, kind of a suitability area, in squared kilometers. And basically what I'm doing here, I just renaming this mask sun to something that it's more meaningful, mask squared kilometer, and basically dividing this by 100, so I can have like really like a area, because I compensate for the values are represented between 0 and 100. And now the last step, it's basically merge the information with the polygon data again. The polygon, I started the polygon, it's only one polygon, right? But now I read all the information for the years, and now basically I can have the cattle density and the cattle heads, goat density, goat heads, and all the covariates and all the years. So this is for one polygon, right? And here are all the years. And if you check the polygon result, let's check the columns. So basically, instead to have the cattle 2000, cattle 2021, 2022, it's basically cattle heads. And with this mask squared kilometer, I basically used that to estimate the densities. And now I have cattle density. And I did that also for goats. And basically I did for the animals that were here, right? If I add more animals, of course I need to have this information in the polygon, it will pops up. And now I have also all the covariates. So this is perfect aligned. So I know now that the cattle density in for the specific year and all the values that I want to use for modeling. And this value, again, this was derived by the spatial average, right? So basically, yeah, that's basically the approach that we implemented. And the way to run this for multiple polygons is basically several of the steps that I show, they already run in parallel. So the average runs in parallel. The reading runs in parallel. So the way to run this is basically you loop over all the polygons. So when we need to run this in production, we use different process to do that. So we kind of oversubscribe a bit the CPU threads to really take advantage of the time where it's not computing something. And here basically I put it all the steps together. So, and now I just take 5 random samples. So when I do sample 5, it's just taking randomly 5 polygons and applying it. So it's basically processing for this municipality, for this municipality, for this municipality. And in the end, I have here actually way more records because it's basically the number of the municipalities by the years, right? So basically that's the way that we treated the data here. It's kind of it's a fundamental aspect of the methodology because like our hypothesis is really this is the relation with the livestock density will be a bit more strong because we removed internally the pixels that are not kind of related with the livestock, right? It's not perfect. We also have problems with the mask, but definitely I think it's better than if we just take all the pixels inside of a municipality because the livestock might be quite clustered in a specific area of the municipality. Okay, so you don't need to run this by yourself. If you want, it's fine, but it might, depending on your notebook, it might take, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes. So basically, this is already computed, and it was saved in a Parquet file, and you can read like the Parquet directly. And basically, the 247 municipalities become like 5,678 records, right? So this is the same structure that I show for one polygon, but now for the whole data set. And you just read that. Here is the livestock data. And now it's just a table, right? You can just treat this as any machine learning method and start exploring it. But we need to remember that that's a real data set. So there are some issues that will appear, and basically it's related to some very high or very unrealistic numbers. And this might happen for different regions, but basically because the source of data here is completely different. So they might be very inconsistent for methodological reasons, for errors and things like that, right? So what I'm doing here is I will now perform the modeling for one animal. So I will take livestock animal, I took cattle, I set up here animal, and now I'm basically saying that my density, my column density is this one. So I put the animal in a variable because if I want to run for another animal, I should just go here and put goat and rerun the whole process, right? So it's better to keep things organized in variables so we can easily change the modeling for another variable. So one thing that it's nice to see is here, basically that's a kind of percentile analysis where we can see that there are a lot of high values really in the like very high for this region, right? We are talking about 2,000 animals per square kilometer. And yeah, that might be, as I said, by maybe a problem in our mask. So if we have like very small areas of livestock and a lot of animals that are in-house, the number might be very inflated. And in this case, the way that we are treating this here, we just select, we compute like a percentile 99, and we basically remove that. So all the values that are more than percentile 99, in this case here is 400 something. I can run here to see. Yeah. So all the values that are more than 419, we will basically remove that. On the paper, we also applied some removal on the lower end. And this is basically a regular analysis to remove outliers, because these outliers might really damage the training and also the accuracy assessment. So it's better to remove them here than put them in the model and try to treat them, because they might be really like they might be an issue. And it's basically because the data set, it comes from two very different sources, right? The densities were computed with the number of animals retrieved by census data divided by the total area of livestock that was completely derived by satellite data, by maps, right? Okay, so once we did that, now we can basically apply like a train test split. And so you probably are familiar with the train test split method from the scikit-learn, but I didn't use that because one thing that it's very important to remember, we have more than 5,000 records, but those records, they refer to the same municipality. So we basically exploded and created a kind of more samples considering different years. So if you just blindly take the 20% of the 10,000 of the more than 5,000 samples, you might end up with a municipality in a year, for example, 2010 in the training data, and the same municipality in 2012 in the test data. And that might bias your accuracy assessment. So the best way here is you need to have like a train test split that will completely remove the municipality. And that's why I first select what are the unique names for the municipality. And I take randomly 49, so 20% from the unique names, 49 municipalities, and I print them. And basically here now I have a list of the municipalities that I will remove. And I need to remove completely. So I don't want to have like the same municipality and train and test, because this will basically artificially increase my accuracy assessment, right? And that's not the right way to assess the modeling. And basically I use this instruction here to say if the municipalities are inside of this list, I will basically say it's a test. And now we end up with 4,500 samples for training and 1,000 samples for test, right? It's pretty okay, like 20%. And I always do this when I'm doing modeling. I keep like the train and the test data basically as a mask, and I just filter then when I feed the model. In this case, because I'm applying the train, the test, and sometimes I also add the calibration to do some hyperparameter tuning. But because of time, I didn't include here the hyperparameter tuning or feature selection. But it's perfectly doable, right? Now you just have a table and you can just work out with that. So, and one thing that it's, so now we have the train, the test data, it's split. We are predicting the cattle density. Here I need to put the animal. And now I need to have my covariates, right? So, and one thing that sometimes actually mess it up when I'm doing some modeling is sometimes I create some columns to help me with the modeling part or with the assessment. And now I have these two columns that I added here. And I should not include these columns in the model, right? It's nonsensical, and I don't have raster data for that. So that's why I always have a list of the covariates, COVs, and I check that. So you need to have like, you need to clearly see what you are sending to the model as covariates from a list, considering the whole table that you are working. In this case here is a data frame. And okay, so now I have a list of covariates, target variable. For the random forest, I will perform a cross-validation. And I will do the same thing that I did to separate train and test. So it means that for the 80% of data remaining, the evaluation will follow the same principle. So if during the cross-validation, the data is used for training for one municipality, all the years should be used for training. And all the years from the other municipality should use for test. So in this way, you avoid like bias in the so some work refer that to spatial cross-validation. grouped cross-validation. And in this case, it's on the polygon level. So basically, that's the group column that I will use, and I will use like to do the assessment like a 5-fold cross-validation. So I will train 5 random forests in the 8% of the data and assess the other remaining part with that, and we can see how the accuracy looks like. So basically, this is like the function that it's available in the scikit-learn. And here, there are several parameters. It's quite comprehensive function, but you need to send a model. Here, I'm sending like a random forest regressor. You need to send the covariates that you want to use, and you need to note that I'm just using the training data, right? So I first select which of the data is training, and I select the covariates. Which of the data is training, and I select the target variable, in this case, animal density. So I'm running it in parallel. So it will run 5 random forests in parallel. I need to set the group, and the group here, it's basically the name of the municipalities. So this information will be used for the cross-validation, and that's fundamental. I put verbose to see some progress here, and for the CV strategy, I defined the group k-fold. And this means that they split among the train and the validation for every step of the CV will be based on the name of the municipality. And it will avoid the problem that I explained. So that you have like it would be an issue if you have like the same municipality in the training and in the test in different years. So basically, I have the results, right? You can see the predictions here. Basically, these are the number of animals for the municipalities. And now I'm basically creating a data frame here with the expected value and with the predicted value. And in the list of functions that it's in the repository, there is a method called a density plot. And I worked a lot in this function to have like a nice plot with some metrics that would be really meaningful to understand the result. So you have here the R square, the D square. This is more suitable for data with a non-normal distribution. In this case here, it's more like a Poisson distribution. You have the root mean square error and the CCC metric. So this one, it's one of the favorites that from Tom. And here you have like the observed and the predicted data. And yeah, the R square, it's not that high, but we see some patterns, right? And this was in the cross-validation, right? Here we use 80% of the data. We did the cross-validation. So you have the number of samples, k-fold, and all the information. Another plot that I also run is this. So here you can see the observed and the predicted. So when you can analyze how the distribution looks like. And okay, so I did the cross-validation. Remember, it was trained 5 models with portions of the data. But now I want to predict the test set that I separated. So now I will train a random forest with all the training data, with the 80% of the samples. So that's what I'm doing here. And here in the predict, I'm basically running the prediction on the test set, right? So now I have the training, the test set. So I can see the result of the prediction. And I can plot the same. So this is in a data that the model didn't see at all. So the accuracy is a bit higher. It might be because of even that we do this kind of selection per municipality, some municipalities might be very close. So we might still see some spatial correlation in the cross-validation, right? Here, We have the same plot now in the test set. And because now we have like a kind of a final model with the random forest, you can also see the variable importance. And so with this model, the most important variable is the accessibility maps, basically distance from cities. We also have this arid index. This data was derived by climate to see places where you have like really dry ecosystems, and NDVI, and like human footprint layer. So there are several layers here, and you can see the importance, right? So yes, so I did this analysis several times, and these layers, they keep kind of changing a bit, right? But in general, that's what we see, right? So the accessibility maps are very important. You have like relation with the, of course, the NDVI, like human footprint, and this arid index we didn't use in the paper, in the manuscript, in the first version. So now we are redoing the whole modeling in the review process to improve the results. So and we are adding more variables. Okay, so we end up here. Now we have a model that was trained on a polygon set, and remember, here it's still on polygon level, right? So we did the model. We could predict the polygon also. So we could predict, save the polygon. We have the densities. We could compare that. But the model is still at level of the polygon data. So we used the information derived by the spatial temporal mean, and now we want to move forward to the pixel level. So what I will do, I will just skip here the AutoML and go to the prediction step, and later we back to the AutoML, because the AutoML will have a new model, but I would like to show first how the predictions look like on a pixel level. So basically, to run the prediction, we have the model. The model is saved here, basically this RF. So now we need to do the same steps that we did up, but now I don't need to inform anymore the window, because I want to read the whole data, right? So if I just omit the window here, I can read all the information. So now I just read 47 layers that were used to predict, but I also will read the mask, because I don't want to predict, for example, livestock on urban area, in water, in forest. So I will use the mask really to remove values. And again, if you go here and check this data set, this is cover, all the covariates are here, and this is basically the pixels that from the raster images. So this data, you need to do some transposition, because the scikit-learn is expecting this in a different format. And also, you need to make sure that you don't have any NA. So some of the layers might have NA because of the projection, or depending of the, maybe like some of these variables might be like, I don't know, in water, or might be specifically for land. So here, basically, I have a prediction mask where I say, I don't want to have any pixel outside of the masked area, like for the outside from the potential area for livestock. And also, I don't want to have any pixel with NA in any of the covariates. And when I do that, I need to transpose the data and filtering, and I end up with the expected shape to predicting the scikit-learn, right? So here are all the pixels, and here are all the features that we use it for modeling. So with that, I need to put the output variable. So I basically create like an empty array here, and I run the predict in the same way that I did run for the polygons, and I basically put this in the expected format of the scikit-learn. So now I have all the pixels with one band. So this is basically the density of cattle for all the pixels, and the prediction is already done. So we will basically save two images. One is the densities that we are modeling, and the other, it's the density multiplied by the masked area, by the potential land of livestock. It means that if you have a pixel that it's only 30% of land for livestock, and you know the density in that pixel, you can see the number of heads here will be 30% of the density in the entire pixel, right? So, and because the area, it's also like at a kilometer, 1 square kilometer, you can derive the head count. So you do this, and we have a function in the scikit-learn, in scikit-map, to save the cattle density and the cattle head count. And now we have two layers. And I don't need to download them, but I will download just to, I can open them here just a second. Yeah. And now I will open my QuantGIS. So I can open the density. Also the head count. So let's put some base map here so we can see a bit better. And I will put some colors. And here is the head count. So, yeah. Sure, yeah. The polygons are here. Yeah. And for example, areas that are outside of the grassland, right? Look, this is really like cropland, right? And this is not considered for livestock. And here is really like an area where we have a more productive grassland and pastures. It's actually close where I was living in Brazil. And yeah, it makes sense, right? So, but there is one thing that this is the density, right? So what happened is, I can load, just a second. I can load the potential land. This is the map, the raster layer that we use it to split I'll put green. Here, basically, that's the potential land for livestock. So it means that in this specific pixel here, I have 23, the values are here on bottom. I have 23% of land for livestock, right? In this specific pixel. So what the head count is, it's basically the densities multiplied by the land that it's effective used by livestock in that municipality. And when you do that, you can see a bit more like kind of a different pattern, because now you use the information, the fraction of land, to allocate the animals, right? So even that you might have like some large density in a specific area like here, because you have some mixture in fraction of land or in pixels, you don't use all that land for livestock. So the actual number of animals there will be smaller, right? So yeah, I'm almost running out of the time. So basically, I'm just back here. I will not execute the AutoML, but the AutoML, it's basically like it will find a different model. There are several setups already implemented in this eval ML. But if you run, it's as I said, you can just run as a regular table. But in the end, the model will be stored in this AutoML best pipeline, and you can call predict. So if you do this later, we will end up with a different model. Yesterday, for example, the best model was ElasticNet, and did give me like a completely different, not completely different, but like an output with a different patterns, and it was very interesting. So this is a very nice way to start exploring like application, because you can have some quick results testing a different set of algorithms. And here in this last part, it's the same thing for the prediction. So you predict, you save. The only difference is the AutoML, it doesn't work with the NumPy directly. So you need to create a data frame. And this is like it's more for prototype. It's a severe limitation if you want to scale up that for the whole world, for example. So I have one last slide where basically I think one of the key messages is really possible to harmonize on the fly raster layers with different spatial and temporal resolution. I didn't explain this in detail, but some layers, they basically end up, for example, in 2029. So we have like a gridded data for GDP that ends in 19. So it means that if we want to predict 2022, we don't have this data, and the maintainer didn't launch that, right? And maybe they will never do it, I don't know. But what happens is we have most of the data set, it's covered from 2000 to 2019. So we still have a lot of data that we could use. So what we do, and this is also inside of that function, we basically assume a constant value from 2019 onwards, right? 2020, 2021, 2022. It's a limitation of course, because you are basically repeating this covariate, but other covariates will bring change, and the maps will not be the same, right? So, of course, we are very transparent about that, but it's still a better solution than not use a GDP, right? That's a real case application. This is not just some benchmark data set that you have everything perfect. This is a data that you need to deal with these constraints. So and basically we harmonized everything using GDAL. Actually, you can use build VRT, but we use GDAL warp right in VRT formats. So a single spatial temporal model can be trained over all the years. And if you go back to the tutorial and change the year, put, I don't know, 2000, you will see the 2000 map for livestock density for the same region, right? So you can use all the years to train and use the model to also predict all the individual years. So run models on a polygon level, as we show here, and apply on a grid or a pixel level, for example, 1 kilometer. It's possible. Technically, it's possible, but we still need to understand what's happening, because you have some difference in scales, right? And we need to, in the paper, in the manuscript of the livestock, we did a final adjustment because the areas might vary a lot. It means that if you predict, and this we still need to evaluate, we predicted all the pixels in this map here, right? But now I have the polygons. So I have a pixel value that I predicted for inside of this polygon, and I have a prediction for the polygon that uses the average values. But now if I just get all the values that I predicted here and I average them, probably the result will be different. And same for the head count. If I just sum up all the animals here, the number will be different because there is a mismatch in scale. So in some case, you need to do some correction, and you need to understand what are these differences, right? We are basically using here like machine learning as a tool. And as I said, I didn't run the AutoML approach, but it's a good starting point for prototype and have like initial results. Yeah, we are almost like like, yeah, we ended the time, but yeah, I'm open to questions, and thank you for staying till now.